Okay. I believe it's 7 o'clock. How's everybody this evening? Everybody good? Excellent, excellent. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. All right, so let's look at our weekly schedule. That's how we start every week. All right, so this week we were looking at preventive law, developing risk and crisis management plans, assessing the school safety plans, school and legal environment. And so your task for this week was to locate the copies of your school emergency plan and assess those plans. And so here's kind of my standard response, and then we're going to talk about individual folks who did that. So let me move over here. So here's kind of what I've responded back to a lot of folks. Emergency plans are only effective if they're available, communicated effectively, and we're going to talk about each of these, updated regularly, and have been practiced regularly. Plans must be adapted to current conditions and virtual platforms, but must keep confidentiality and security in mind. A lot of you responded that they have them on some virtual platform, your plans now. Unauthorized access to virtual platforms is a major disruption. Somebody getting into your Google Drive or on your forms. Safety and privacy issue and must be addressed. How do we keep people to those plans and that don't need to be into those plans? Clarifications of roles and responsibilities is a major part of communication. Who does what, where, when, and why? Updated staff rosters are a must. Social media can be important communication with stakeholders as well. Power or internet outage would render your emergency plan unavailable without hard copies. These are some of the things that we've done. So now I'm going to call on some of you. Let me stop my share and see who we got with us here, or I can look at our participants. I'll just stop the share. All right, so here are some folks. I'll start with Jessica. Welcome this evening, Jessica. And Jessica pointed that out, that in her building, they don't have cellular internet. I'm like you, Jessica. I worked in a lot of old buildings and I worked in some newer ones, but in CMS, even in the newer buildings, they jammed cell phones intentionally. And so this notion, well, you can just dial up the safety plan on your phone. Well, what if your phone doesn't? What are you going to do now? And what if you're in one of those old buildings that doesn't have internet? My wife taught in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, which is the richest district in the state, for 15 years and never had internet in the building. Now, I'm not talking about back in the horse and buggy era either. I'm talking about in the 2000s. I mean, I understand when I first started, there was no internet and in the rural places, but I'm talking about in Davidson, one of the wealthiest towns in North Carolina, did not have internet in their building, period, and no cell service. So that's not a far-fetched notion. So Jessica, if you'll share with us what you shared in your post this week.
So as far as our emergency plan, it's very concise. It's 10 pages. And my school and my district's really phenomenal at making sure we practice all the drills and we do everything. But the biggest obstacle that we have faced in the last couple of years, and fortunately, it's just really starting to be brought attention to our district, is in our building, is we have no cell phone service whatsoever. And they switched out our phone lines because our original classroom phones, I didn't include this in my post, but our original classroom phones, you couldn't dial long distance. So we complained about that, because how do you get in touch with a parent? So then they updated our phones through AT&T, but it's all connected via internet. So last year we had a situation where a kid ran, and that same day our internet was down and no one had a cell phone working. So it was up to the teacher to send another kid to another classroom to notify them. So it was like chaos. And so that's our biggest concern, is when we practice these intruder drills and everything where we're locked down, there's no form of communication, because you're not supposed to be on your computer. You're not supposed to be this and that. And so we're just left kind of sitting there. And so we have brought it up with our head of emergency risk assessment for our district. And they pretty much have no answers for us. They won't let us connect to the wireless because of technology filter issues and safety. So we're just all kind of left like, in case of an emergency, what would you? There's no way to communicate.
Not good. And you know, all these things always happen at the worst time. Class change, when your internet's out. I mean, when, you know, things don't tend to happen when everything's going good and at the right time. They tend to go badly. So that's something that you as principal are going to need to be when you're in charge, when you are the one who is liable for this liability. This is something that you're going to have to get involved in. Our resident principal expert, Dr. Griffin Jordan, is here. Dr. Griffin Jordan, what are your thoughts on in a situation like this? What would you do? I mean, what have you done, or what are your thoughts?
Well, we're fortunate. We do have cell service. We have organized in my school also a remind message where I can send a text out to everyone. So that works great for us. If I was in your shoes, you would have to be very proactive. If you don't have that accommodation, there needs to be, like you said, someone going. You need to have a plan where certain people are identified and they can go and get the message to different people. That's unfortunate. I actually, when I first came to Durham, I was working at one of the larger high schools, and we had a gas leak, and then I think it was like a tornado watch. It was like we had to go outside, but then it was like a storm watch, and it was like everything kind of came together, the perfect storm. And the cell service was spotty. So we also have radios. So, you know, and we had to order some more. You know, you live and learn.
There's the answer.
Every crucial person always had to carry a radio, whether you were going to the cafeteria, to the bathroom, wherever you were going, you had to have that attached to you. That was the saving thing. That was, you know, you have to find something that's going to work.
Yeah.
I was going to say each grade level chair has a radio, but that's 1 out of 6 teachers per grade level. So exactly. I have one in my room, but I still have, and when I say like we have complained, we brought it to the school board, and it's just, it keeps falling on deaf ears. But it is something that has been our #1 priority and concern this year is, what do we do in case there is something like that?
Well, I'll tell you what I did, and I'm the bad example of most everything, but I'll tell you what I did. I got the PTA and got all the money I could wring out of them, and I sold candy and got all the money that I could do for that. I filed a petition with the FCC and put an antenna up on one of the central buildings in the middle of the campus, and I bought everybody a radio. Everybody a radio. Couldn't depend. We had mobile units. We had buildings, you know, here, there, everywhere. We had, we had the 300 building, the 600, we had 4 different buildings and like 8 mobiles, and then a gym building and an auxiliary. I think we had 11 different buildings that were not under roof. I mean, they were spread out over campus, and there was no way. And so that project took me the better part of a year, but you got to find a way. Let me share my screen. There are three different functions of negligence. And this is one of the first big rocks in this course that you've got to understand. All right. So what are those 3 functions of negligence? All right. So 3 standards of negligence are misfeasance. You did the wrong thing. You didn't know it was the wrong thing, but you did the wrong thing. And then you've got And you've got malfeasance. You maliciously did the wrong thing. You knew it was wrong, but you did it anyway. And then the one that we're talking about tonight, mostly nonfeasance. You didn't do anything. You knew it was a problem. And you said, well, what's the probability that something bad's going to happen? You throw up your hands. When you go to court, they don't let you throw up your hand because you're what's known as a person responsible. You are responsible to make sure this stuff works. And everybody at the central office is going to have amnesia. When they say, well, these people, we didn't know. We thought everything was good. They didn't say there was a problem. If you are responsible for that campus, and you will be as principal of that building, nonfeasance, you did nothing and you were compelled to do something. If you know that you have 5 out of every 6 teachers are not in communication, you better find a way to get them in communication. That's the notion here. And the answer is you may have to go old school. You may have to go radios. That's exactly what I had to do. I went radios. Cell phones were not that old at that time and were pretty sketchy. And, and so we went radios. We just said, this may be funny, but everybody's going to have a radio, and everybody needs to have their radio with them, everybody at all times. And that's how we solved that problem. So thank you very much, Jessica, for that input. Some more things that caught my eye. Sandy, if you're with us, Sandy talked about clarifications of roles and responsibilities. When a crisis occurs, who is the person in charge? Who does what, where, and when? That's got to be part of that crisis box that says, the custodian's this, the principal's that. This is who does that. Who makes the decision to go to what level of evacuation? Who makes the decision that's not far enough? Somebody mentioned in one of their posts that they worried about when they evacuated, it was right next to the building. It wasn't really far enough. If anything was wrong, you were going to be right in the line of fire. And I had a couple of folks who said, I'm really concerned that everybody on this side of the building goes to the same exit. When it's just a drill and everybody's just kind of calm and relaxed, yeah, it takes a while to get everybody out. But what about if there's a fire behind you? What would happen then? And so those roles and responsibilities need to be clarified. And so Sandy was the one that talked about that. Kelly talked about the level 2. Is Kelly with us? I don't see her.
I am.
There you are. I see it. Kelly talked about it, Audrey Kell. And this is a big deal in high schools and CMS because that's what got Superintendent Forlass fired was they had such a disaster at Butler when they had the shooting. Now, I'm not making light because, a child was killed in the shooting at Butler High School, but somehow social media had all 3 of the evacuation plans and put out different ones were on social media. Some were the students were on campus, some that they were at the church next door, and some that they were at the Coliseum. And nobody knew where their kids were, and it was a major issue. And so somebody's got to say, we're going to level 2, and everybody's got to know what level 2 is. We can't just say we're going to evacuate. Somebody's got to make the call on what that level of evacuation is. Somebody's got to make that call. And we need to be clear on who's going to make that call and not stand around and wait for somebody from the central office to come to make it, or somebody from the fire department or, the police to make that. Somebody's got to make that call immediately. So Kelly, talk to us through that one a little bit.
As you said, I'm at Audrey Kell and we have almost 3,600 kids. We're extremely overcrowded. And one of my concerns is we've never even practiced, a level 2, like how to get 3,600 kids out of the building safely to an off-campus site would be a big concern, because I think the majority of staff members, if you were to ask them, where is our level 2 evacuation site, they probably wouldn't be able to give you that answer. And they're the ones that are supposed to be in charge of, evacuating the kids safely. And just the feasibility of moving that number of kids in a timely manner, it would be concerning to me.
Yeah. Now, I'm not making light of this, and I don't mean to do this for a joke, but now it's not like this hadn't happened recently in that district. I mean, Butler's what, less than 20 miles from Audrey Kell?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I mean, You can throw a rock on a windy day from one school to the next. So it's not like that we're talking something that's highly improbable.
Mhm.
Charlotte Mecklenburg, I hate to say this, has an active shooter pretty much every year. I don't, Kelly, you're younger than me. Do you remember a year in recent memory where there wasn't an active shooter on campus?
No,
I don't.
no.
I mean, I hate to say it, but there's not many years that a kid hadn't gotten shot. But there's never been a year, and I've been involved with Charlotte Mecklenburg, either working there or consulting there back to my Chapel Hill days in the 80s. I don't remember a year where we didn't have an active shooter at a high school.
Yeah, it's just a concern to me that the people who are, supposed to be leading the children probably wouldn't be able to tell you even where they're supposed to go.
Not good. Not good. And when it happens, heads roll. That's unfortunate, and you don't want it to be yours. I mean, these are the kinds of things that matter. Safety, security. I hate that we have to cover this first, but these are the things that matter. And so, yeah, that's unfortunate, but yeah, that'd be something. I see Sandy has joined us. Sandy, thank you for your input on clarification on roles. If you want to explain that one to us.
Me, Sandra, or
Yes.
is there another Sandy? Okay. No, Sandy Purcell. Okay,
Sandy
sorry.
Purcell.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we're talking about safe our roles within our school. I know with our school we have a crisis management book besides the one with the county, and in that book everybody we know who's on the crisis team. Those people have walkie-talkies, they've had training, and they have certain locations. And usually once we have some type of crisis, whether it's fire drill or whatever, we usually meet back in the principal office and we do like a checkup or check down. Did everybody have their green cards? Teachers should have a green card hold up if they have all their kids. If not, they should have a red card held up. And then we must go to that teacher and ask who's missing. And so everyone have their buildings they're supposed to check. Everybody know you do an in-call to make sure the building's clear, and then you have to do another call. So we all kind of have our certain roles that we play and what that part is in checking. The only thing that I felt is that when I was reviewing it, there are some staff members that did leave, and we have to make sure that that's updated, that person, replacing that person who's on that crisis team. If that staff member leave, making sure that we have someone else in that position and making sure those names are updated and everybody know who that person is, and covering their spot. So that was one of the things that I found, that keeping that information updated as time go on and revisiting some of that information, not just in the beginning of the year, because we really do real good in the beginning of the year, but making sure we keep having those conversations.
Yeah, declines. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. And to piggyback onto that, I don't see Mallory with us, but Mallory said that she's at a new and growing charter school that has, that's adding new people a lot and frequently. And that amplifies that need to make sure that every week when you update those student rosters, that you're updating those faculty rosters of who's responsible for what, and that portends that we get the training to the new people as well. I mean, as Sandy just pointed out, unfortunately, we tend to go over this in the workday before the school year starts, and we don't update any when staff changes. We don't update when we get new people. We don't train any new people. It's just, if you weren't here that day, too bad for you. Well, that's not good. That's not good. This has got to be an ongoing thing. Every time that you get a new person in your building, there's needs to be an onboarding piece to this, and updating. And as people come and go, we update roles and responsibilities and training. That has to be, as Sandy pointed out, it can't be a beginning of the year thing during the work days and then that's the end of it. It can't be that. It has to be more than that.
Dr. Lamb, I'd like to add just a little.
Yes, I want you to.
Also, sometimes I've worked in different schools where administration would consider themselves looking out for the staff, and I know you all are busy, so we're going to have a fire drill next period, or we're going to have a lockdown drill tomorrow, so that I'm giving you all the heads up, thinking that it's helping them. It depends on the way you present it. I probably halfway scared my staff to death at the beginning of the year because I'm paranoid about intruders and lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. So I shared with them how serious I am about it and that I care about them and I want them to go home to their children and their spouses. And we need to make sure our students do the same. And we had this long conversation and I told them, we're going to have plenty of practices. And at the beginning of the year, and then again, at the beginning of January, I actually got on the intercom and walked them through, we were practicing. So the whole school heard me as I walk. Hey, so now you should be doing this or now. And then every month we have a fire drill. They do not know about it. They don't know about our lockdown drills because they need to understand that if it really happens, they're not going to have a heads up. So they actually appreciate the fact that, it's not a gotcha, you're not ready for the fire drill, but it's like, she's looking out because she wants all of us to be able to, in an emergency, get out of here in 2 minutes. So don't think that you're helping them by, tipping them off that there's a fire drill or lockdown drill coming.
I think that's a great, thank you, Dr. Griffith. That's exactly right. I mean, emergencies don't happen when you're planning for them or when it's the easy times or, when it's the best time for you. Practicing them the same time and telling everybody is not practice. That does you no good. It does not increase your preparedness. It just does not. And so you got to make sure that you understand that you're not doing them any favor. Thank you for that. The last thing on this before we kind of move on is stakeholder communication and social media. Shakita talked about that in her post, and I see she's with us. That scares me. And the reason why is we have to condition our parents and our stakeholders in terms of what social media and who's putting the social media out. Part of what got away at Butler is their social media went crazy. They didn't have any official outlet or official site, and people just started speculating across all these different ones. And the stories that were out there were, again, tragedy happened. A child was shot and killed in the lobby of the building. But according to social media, that they were, it was a mass shooting and dozens or hundreds injured and all these things and all these different, they're here, they're there, social media went crazy and 99.9% of it was inaccurate. And so my last rant on this one is, and it's time for us to move on, is that you need to have one social media site controlled by one person that puts the school's official information out, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or whatever that you do. You need to have a social media account, and you need to train parents and students, all your stakeholders, that this is the official word. And you need to make sure that when something happens that you use that to broadcast that official word on your social media. And so that people won't go to all these crazy places and these, these people with inaccurate information that causes even more panic and more trouble in your building. So let's recap what we've talked about this evening is communication, practice, planning, preparation, those kinds of things. Make sure that we understand we need a crisis box in the front of the building. Again, I know that's old school, but again, if you without phone or cell service, you're gonna wish that you were old school. So let me share my screen. So underneath tonight's lesson and 2, I have a let me see here what I've got. A crisis box. There is a PDF of a crisis response box, and it has all the background and information. But the beauty of it as well is it has everything that should be in the box in here, and it explains it. What the content should be and how to integrate your command functions and all those things. It talks about everything that should be in your box. There's a summary of the contents right there that should be in your box. So if you don't know, and one of my folks posted that they have a crisis cart. I thought, what a great idea. It has the box and all the other stuff on it. That's a great idea to have a crisis cart. But if you don't know what a crisis box is, I have this for you. Again, it's under Zoom session 2. So make sure you revisit that. And again, you can't be old school enough. I know everybody wants everything on their phone, but if your phone don't work, you're blind. And that's not a good place to be during this time. All right. All right. So, okay, that's fine. A couple more things on liability. Again, going back to liability. Negligence is defined as misfeasance, did the wrong thing unknowingly. Nonfeasance, did nothing. That's what we're talking about tonight. Or malfeasance, you maliciously did the wrong thing with intent. You knew it was wrong, but you did it anyway. Now, you can get sued for any of those 3. The one that we're talking about tonight is did nothing. You knew that you had gaps and you didn't bother to try to correct those things. They'll still get you. This is not, I don't know whether it was Bart or Homer Simpson that said, oh, you can't get hurt if you don't do nothing. Yeah, you can. In our business, you are compelled to take action. Doing nothing will get you in trouble in our business. All right. So now let's shift gears and talk about due process a little bit. What is due process? Well, that's the law says that people are due, and our schools are governed by due process. And the next big liability or legal area, in terms of negligence is due process. And there's 2 types. Students have a little trouble. We have substantive and procedural due process. Substantive due process, and you'll read about this week in your book, in your law book. Substantive due process is what is the policy or law? What does it say that students get or owed? What you're supposed to do as an administrator. And then that's the substance. That's substantive. Procedure is what did you do? Did you follow those things? And again, that's when that negligence kicks in. Did you do the wrong thing? The law said do this, but you did that. Well, that's negligence. That's misfeasance. Even if you didn't know, well, I didn't know what the law was. I didn't know what the policy was. I didn't intentionally do it, but it doesn't matter. You're supposed to know what substantive due process is for discipline, for exceptional children, for finances, all these different areas that we're going to talk about. You're supposed to know what the law or the policy is, what you're supposed to do. And that you just didn't do it is not an excuse. Well, I didn't know is not an excuse. That's going to again be nonfeasance. Or I don't do that. I want to do this. Well, that's going to be you maliciously did the wrong thing. Or you did the wrong thing and didn't know. But again, our standard in law that we're going to talk about pretty much every night this semester is due process. What is the substance? Substantive due process. What are they supposed to get? What are we supposed to do? And what did we do? When we discipline a kid, here are the things that we're supposed to do. These are the things. He gets to tell his story. He gets to bring witnesses. He gets to know what the charges. All those things. Did you do those things though? That's the difference. It is what are you supposed to do and what did you do? That's substantive and procedural due process. And that's where you get hit with those negligence claims. Again, that's a lot of liability on your part. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is liability here, trying to keep you safe from bad things happening to you personally. All right. And so understanding those now. So the takeaway on due process is to make sure that you both serve both substantive and procedural that follows district policy, state law, and federal law. That's what we're talking about. And everything that we deal with, disciplining a kid, there's a whole manual. Exceptional children, there's a whole manual. Financial dealings with your budget, there's a whole teacher hiring teachers, there's a process. Everybody in every district in North and South Carolina and the one that's in Georgia that we've got, due process is the same. The difference is that's the substantive due process is the same, what you're supposed to do. Now, the procedural varies from district to district in terms of who does what. I've told the story before and I'll tell it again. I worked in a very rural district where I had to advertise the job. I had to screen the applicants. I had to interview. I had to call the references. I had to send them for the background check and the drug test. When I worked in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, those 20 years, I didn't have to do any of that. All I had to do was call my analyst and say, send me somebody. And I picked the one I want. I didn't have to do any. Now, all the thing, the substance was done. I just didn't have to do it. And so when we get to personnel, you're going to have to, the activity that week is find out who does what in your district. What is your role in it? And make sure that you follow through. You may not have to do any of those things. You may be in a low wealth district and have to do all of those things. But you got to know what the substance is and then the procedure, what I'm responsible for. If you don't fulfill yours, they'll hit you on one of these functions of negligence when you go to court. So everything that we do, whether it's hiring people, evaluating people, whether we're dealing with money, whether we're doing discipline, whether it's exceptional children, everything we do, there is a substantive due process. This is what we're supposed to do according to federal law, state law, or local board policy. And then what did we do? The actual procedure. What did we do those things? The one that you'll deal with a lot is discipline. Did you follow all the steps that you were supposed to in due process when you discipline a kid, especially when you're looking for an out of school suspension or an exclusion, or moving a kid to an alternative school or putting them out? So it speaks to our first case study where a teacher effectively excluded a kid for a year without any due process. You know, a kid could have brought a gun to school and discharged it and got less punishment than he got from turning in his brother's homework. Wow. When we get to that case, you're going to see, I mean, you can't be doing these things just because I said so. Everything we do has to have a legal basis. We have to know, what am I supposed to do? And then go act accordingly. So to make sure. And then the last piece of this is, when we look at the things that most likely get you sued and get you losing your job, the first one is going to be disciplinary data reporting, and not reporting to the police what happened in your building when you're required to do that. So let's shift gears here and let's look at the 10 things that are most likely to get you fired.
Dr. Lamb, can I ask one question?
Yes.
I apologize. This is Sandy Purcell. I know in our county, they were saying that we don't have to do hearings no more when it comes to discipline. So when I was reading, I was trying to understand, we're still contacting the parents to inform the parents of the situation and the action. How does that vary now that we don't do hearings? But
all right,
what do I still need to do?
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked that question, and I'll explain that to you. So what Cumberland County Schools is doing is they've adopted the Charlotte Meck model. So what that means is when a kid commits a infraction that according to the code of conduct in their district requires a 10-day suspension and a due process hearing, rather than doing the due process hearing as just a matter of course, they can add an additional step that can prevent that or shortcut that system. What they can do is a DTM, a discipline team meeting with the parent. This is legal. They can call the parent in and say, here's, let's make a deal. What would you accept this is what your kid did. You know, he gets a chance to say, no, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. That DTM takes place. So it's not like you're not doing hearings. You're not doing a formal hearing. You're doing a discipline team meeting where you sit together and you kind of adjudicate, and the parent accepts whatever you're going to do, whether it's going to the discipline school or the 10-day suspension or whatever. They accept that piece. And so that's what you're doing. Now, what it does is basically let's make a deal. If you will forego the hearing and us having to send a hearing officer out, an attorney out, to do that, we'll cut you a deal rather than 10 days. If you'll take 5, we won't go to a hearing. Or if you'll take 6 weeks at the discipline school, we won't ask for a year exclusion. That kind of thing. It's basically Monty Hall, let's make a deal. And what it's designed to do is cut your numbers down, and it does. Now, does it make schools safer? No. That's not the point. The point is to get some of these reportable numbers down that you're required to report. And that's what Charlotte did to get theirs down. And underreporting and cutting deals and doing those things. Of course, now they won the lawsuit Friday, by the way. They won the initial, the court case. Now the civil case, they're going to get killed on the civil case, but they won the criminal case on Friday, where these young ladies were contending that they were not telling police, not investigating, underreporting, cutting deals and doing all that with the perpetrators, and all of that was true. But they could not prove that the district knew that. So it's going to go civil on the actual administrators. They've already been sued. And so
why do you say they're going to get killed on the civil?
Because there's plenty of evidence that those things happen. And the immediate past superintendent admitted they happened. Somebody should have told Ernest to hush, but he got on TV and said they happened. That's why they're going to get killed on the civil side, because Ernest got on TV and said they did, which wasn't smart. So they let Ernest go home. And so that's why they have an interim superintendent now. Ernest did not get advice from an attorney, or if he did, he didn't listen to it. And basically he admitted that they did what they did. Now, what he said was, but he was very clear, and everybody's been very clear. The district, this was not an organized effort by the district. This was not a criminal activity. This was, this was a principal underreporting and covering up what was going on in the building. So the city asked to be excused from the suit, and they were. The police department said, we didn't know anything about this. Nobody told us. And they got excused. And then CMS was able to prove that this was not an organized effort on our part, or that nobody told them to do. We didn't have any idea this was going on either. We thought that this person that was signing their monthly form was reporting accurately and doing the things that they were supposed to do. And so, so Ernest went on TV and said, this was, these people didn't do what they were supposed to. And he moved the principal out. So, everybody denied that it was organized, but unfortunately said this person is to blame. And that's why I say they'll get killed on the civil suit, because it's pretty clear that police are saying we didn't know, and the district is saying we didn't know. And they did find that there was a finding that she was raped, this particular case. That was a point of fact in the case. It wasn't alleged. They said, yes, that was proven. They did a rape kit that she was. And so I don't see how they're going to wiggle out of this one on the civil side, but they might, this thing about it, you pay your money, take your chances when you go to court. They may get out. It would be my adjudication that it would be easier to get a camel through the eye of a needle than to get off on this one. When your boss says, yeah, you did it, even if he's your former boss, but he was your boss at the time. So You know, we'll see how that goes. Now, I'm not pulling against anybody. I'm just telling you, it doesn't look good on the civil side. But what we're talking about here is your duty to report. That's what we're talking about, is your duty to report to police when some certain things happen on your campus. Now, you say, well, why don't you want to tell? Well, there's a punishment if you tell. So let's start with that. What is the punishment if you tell? So let's look at 1991. No child, Bush the Younger was president, and the United States passed No Child Left Behind, federal law. What does No Child Left Behind say? Does anybody know? There's two big pieces, two big rocks to No Child Left Behind. Children don't have to go to what two kind of schools?
Maybe low performing or like dangerous.
But that's it. Both.
Yeah.
That's the two. Low performing academically and persistently dangerous. Those are the two standards. Your children don't have to go to those kind of schools. Now, a lot of places in the early days of this tried this notion of, we'll put them on a bus and move them somewhere else. Right here it is. This is the one that gets you. But that didn't work. And so now what they do is they fire the administrative team and reconstitute the school. So here's what No Child Left Behind says. Your children don't have to go to low performing or a persistently dangerous school. We all know what low performing is. That's academic on your standardized test. That's what we talked about last semester. You remember when I came on last semester and you thought, who's that big old ugly, overbearing, loud man? And he said, if you don't believe that test scores don't matter, get out now, go home. Don't be a part of this program. Because that's what we were talking about, that low performing piece. You can't just have school and kids not learn anything. You can't just warehouse. Well, this semester, we're talking about the other half of that. That's that persistently dangerous piece. Your kids don't have to go to dangerous schools either. And so you get 1 per every 200 kids of a persistently dangerous incident. What are persistently dangerous incidents? They're acts of violence. There are 16 acts of crime and violence. 9 of them are acts of violence. These are the one that counts against you. And you only get 1 of these for every 200 kids you got. So if you got 1,000 kids, if you exceed 5 of these, if you got 600, if you exceed 3 of these, then you become on the persistently dangerous watch list. And it is a big deal and it is not fun. So here are the things that get you: assault with injury, assault with weapon, death, kidnapping, rape, robbery with weapon, sexual assault, sexual offense, and indecent liberties with a minor. That's what those, you see the ones with the asterisk, that's what those mean. And so why wouldn't a high school principal want to report a rape? Well, it's going to count against you. You're going to get punished. You may lose your job over it. That's why. Now, what does the law say? It says you have to report all that stuff to law enforcement first. When I was a person in the central office of CMS, when they'd call me, first thing I'd ask them when they called to report that something like this had happened, one of these acts of violence, what'd be the first thing I'd ask them? Have you called the law? No, don't call me. Hang up and call the law. That's what I do not want to be, or even anybody to consider that we've entered into some kind of conspiracy to cover this up or to lessen it or not tell it. Don't call me first. You call me second. And then we'll talk about what our next steps are. But now call the police first. One of the things that you have got to understand is school administrators are not qualified to do investigations of a sexual nature. You call the police. I don't care if it's sexual assault, sexual offense, sexual harassment, rape, if it's got sex in the title, you call the law. If you got a resource officer in your building, you get them on the radio, PDQ. If you don't, you call the one over. If you're at the elementary and there's one over at the middle of the high school, you call the number and have them come over. If you have one of these biggies occur, that you call the law. Now, don't say, well, that'd be a bad PR for our school. We don't think about PR. We follow due process. Now you say, well, Dale, where does it say I have to do this? Well, I'll tell you. South Carolina has one, but here's the North Carolina manual. I'm going to share it with you. This will be your Bible. Henceforth, going forward, this will be it. North Carolina Disciplinary Data Reporting and Procedures Manual. This tells you everything that you need to know about disciplinary. Now, the state sets this. Your local has to develop a code of conduct that talks about if you do this, this is how much punishment you get. State doesn't get into that. They set the rules. What is an act of violence? They set this is what's got to be reported to law enforcement. They said these are unacceptable behaviors in schools, either persistently dangerous or reportable offenses to the police. The state law sets all this stuff based on federal law. And please remember that the Office of Civil Rights data now is embedded in Power School. Since 2014, when you put the incidents into Power School, everything has to go in there because the OCR, Office of Civil Rights data, comes out of that database as well. Used to be filed separately, no more, not for the last 9 years. So here it is. This is the manual. This is the true and word, all these things. All right. Disciplinary data defense and requirements, responsible for creating procedures, complying value. And it tells all those authority under 115C 1221 that the state board is required by law for annual report of crimes. 288, certain criminal offenses must be reported. School board policy. Here are the 9, as I told you. Death or homicide, assault with serious injury, assault with a weapon, rape, sexual offense, sexual assault, kidnapping, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and indecent liberties of mind. Those are the 9 that count against you. You get 5 per 1,000. Scoreboard here are all the policies that say Office of Civil Rights collecting data since 2014, and they want all this stuff. You got to understand, we report incidents, not outcomes. So don't be that idiot that thinks if I don't suspend that kid, I don't have to tell. Yes, you do. Suspension is an outcome. It's not an incident. So if 2 kids fight and you say, well, if I don't suspend them, I don't have to tell them that I had 2 kids fighting. Yes, you do. The most common thing is we underreport. These 2 kids were fighting, one of them gets his nose broke. Oh, that was just aggressive behavior. No, that would be a fight. That's the common thing, is to underreport or the hard part on the deal, like at Myers Park is indecent, is basically threaten the student or do, because there is no lesser rape. So it's basically, it didn't happen, or we're threatening you, or it was consensual. And so that's the route that you have to go sometime. But here are all the things that have to be reported. But again, this notion that if I don't suspend you, then I don't have to report. That's not true. We report what happened, not what happened as a result of what happened. We report incidents, not outcomes. And it says right back up here that it's organized around incidents. And that the principal is the one, regardless of who's putting it in there, the principal is responsible for that. So all these things, and it talks about all that. What must be reported in disciplinary data? Here's everything. Oh Lord, you see, it's everything. There's nothing that happens in your building shouldn't be in. There is no major, there is no minor. Everything that happens in your building is supposed to be in Power School in the incident reporting section. Let me say this again. There is no major, there is no minor. This notion of, well, that was a major incident, we'll put that one in. Well, that was just a minor incident. We don't, that is not the law. Everything that happens in your building, if it got a written referral, even if all the kid got was a conference with a teacher or an administrator or a parent, it doesn't matter. If a written referral was generated, now don't say, well, we just won't write it down. Everything has to have a written referral. But every incident that happens in your building must go in Power School, no exception. I don't care if you use third-party data gathering like Swiss or PBIS or whatever. Everything that happened has to go into Power School, period. Everything. All these things have to be reported to the police. Yep.
We use educators handbook.
Mm-hmm. Right. But it's still got to get, it's got a third party, the educator's handbook is migrated into Power School, by the way. It is one of the third-party vendors that will do that. So here we go. Disciplinary data reporting is organized around incidents. It's pretty simple. Incidents, not actions. Incidents are not outcomes. What happened? Not well, if we don't punish them, or or if we only give them this, then we don't have to report it. If we don't suspend them, we don't have to report. That is not correct. And so all these things, guidance on reporting, require a report and offender behavior and action. It tells you all these things. You need to read this manual. Everything that you have to call the law over, everything that must be reported to school, entering instance in there, everything that you have to know to do that. If we go to the back, you say, well, I don't know if that meets the definition of a rape or an assault, or, I don't know. Guess what's in the back of the book? It has definitions of all these things right here, down to embarrassing detail. See all these things? It tells you exactly what it is. Exactly what each one of these, everything that the state says can't happen in their building, because they're sending you money to run these buildings. We'll talk about that later. And they get to tell you what you will and won't do, because they send $8,000 a year per kid. And so for their money, they get to say, these things don't happen in our building. And they tell you what is acceptable and not. And so they actually list them out. So here's definitions. But right here are the things that will not happen in the building. And they have them categorized. Now, you notice there's not a punishment that goes with these. The local district board of education must develop a code of conduct that says how much punishment you get. State doesn't get into that. They say these things will not happen in our schools. If they have a PD prefix, that means that's persistently, that one's going to count against you. And so you get punished for reporting this stuff, but if you get caught not, then bad things happen to you too. You get sued, you get fired. Really bad things happen if you don't report these things, or if you try to cover them up. RO means a reportable offense. That means call a law. Call a law now. That's what that RO stands for. PDs, you have to call a law. You have to understand. Not only you have to call a law, that one's going to count against you in your calculation for a persistently dangerous school under no child left behind legislation. All these PDs, got to call a law. Now, there's 4 exceptions. There are some UB, which is unacceptable behavior, you have to call a law too, because it's a violation of state law. Like communicating threats, although it says UB up front, what does it say in the back? GS 14.2, that means it's a violation of the law. So what do you got to do? You got to call a law. Disorderly conduct's the same way. There's 2 more in here right there, but there's 4 UBs that you have to call the law on, because they have a suffix at the end. But right here are all the things that are not allowed. Right there's the third one, which is UB affray, which is a public fight with more than 2 people, like in the cafeteria. That would be called an affray. You got to call the police on that one. And communicating threats is the last one right here. So there are 4. Including disorderly conduct, we've already gone over that. There are 4 that have a general statute number behind them, that even though they don't have a RO or a PD in front, you still have to call the police. But look at all these that you have to call the police on. There ain't many things, all this stuff, you got to call the law.
Dr. Lamb, I had a question.
Yes.
The case that's in Virginia with the 6-year-old shooting the teacher, and now it's reported that there have been several complaints from the teacher about this student, like, because it's not rape and this and that, but it's just the kid's behavior that kind of led to the shooting. Like, how do you handle that?
In terms of, should they have taken action before this or not?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's according to what, you would have thought that they would have done something with this kid, and they may have done some things with this kid, but you know, most districts do not put elementary kids in their discipline school. That they have to be at least middle school age before they'll, or 11 years old before they'll put them in a disciplinary school. Now, what probably should have been done with this kid is, we don't want to just test kids and put them all in EC, but now I would have to see their data. But normally when you have a kid like this at that age, it's not common to take them out of their normal environment. It's just not common. Now, if they said he had a gun and they searched him and didn't find the gun, I mean, I don't know where he hid the gun, but I'd have to know. But I'm telling you, it's difficult with kids in K-5 because most districts will not allow you to put them in the discipline school. Now, I worked in one district that had a caveat to that, and they did have a wing for those kids. But they had to be violent. They had to have hurt somebody. And I don't know if y'all know this or not, but at both the state mental hospitals, they have schools for kids like this, for young kids, both at Dix and at Broughton. The one at Broughton used to break my heart. When I worked in that district and you would drive through that campus and you would going over to the central office, they had a little playground out back with all this little equipment for kids, and it had razor wire all around it. And on top, it just broke my heart. But yes, if they've harmed somebody, generally there is a psychiatric wing in a state facility nearby that they have to harm. Now that's where that kid will be now. But unfortunately, unless your district will allow it and has set up for it, you're not going to put many 6 years old in discipline schools. You're not going to, give them 6 weeks of right choices or whatever, or, some program like that. Dr. Jordan, Griffin Jordan, if you would end us up tonight on your thoughts on a child like that's been my experience. And as somebody who was in charge of that, unless your district is set up, I mean, they have to, unfortunately, somebody has to get hurt before we normally will move them out.
Well, speaking on that situation, and I've been waiting to hear updates on the news because you get some truths and some false talking. But apparently the mom made a statement that she feels bad, and the school has allowed, I guess there was a plan for her and the father to go in with the student every day. And that particular day, they did not go into the classroom, and she feels awful. I don't know if anybody else heard, of that, but I'm waiting to hear, was that an educational plan that he was so mentally distressed that a part of his education setup was that the parent would come with him in the classroom? And then if they didn't, and that was a part of the setup that was supposed to happen, and they allowed the student to go in the classroom without the parent, is there going to be some type of liability? But I haven't heard anything at all since then. Especially, with the teacher having complaints, parents not there, but the administration allowed the student to come in the classroom anyway.
Yeah. So what Dr. Griffin Jordan is talking about, and thank you for that. And we'll talk about this, and she'll talk about this, when we do exceptional children. What she's talking about is a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, that can be assigned to a child even while they're in the intervention phase before they're placed in exceptional children. And if they had a behavior now, again, FERPA laws we're going to learn about too, privacy. We can't tell if a kid's got a BIP. Now, that's what she's talking about, is we're trying, the school can't come out and say, or not say, or say that he did or didn't. They can't comment. Now, the kid could have had a BIP, a behavior intervention plan. And what Dr. Griffin Jordan very astutely is saying is, if he had a BIP and they were supposed to be with him and they weren't, boy, that's going to be trouble. Because the administrator allowed that kid in the room, and if the plan said they were supposed to be with him and they weren't, again, that's the due process And then, the substance is he's got a BIP, parents got to be with him. How'd it go? Well, we didn't enforce that. Ooh. In the actual practice here or the procedure, if we didn't enforce that, it's not going to be good for the school administration. I can tell you right now. But I don't know. But again, there's no way for us legally to know unless the parent would volunteer that information if that kid had a BIP or not. But that they've alluded to that. But now whether he did or not, we don't know yet. But the school can't say, because the federal law, the FERPA law says you can't divulge things like that. But what we're talking about is a BIP. And we'll talk about those later this semester. I appreciate you being with us tonight. And please you're not interrupting. Ask questions, input, tell your classmates to show up to class. Hopefully it's not that bad. But we like your input and we appreciate you being with us. We're talking about tort liability next week. Tort liability is again, you did a negligent thing. So the question is to talk to your district about, or in your school about field trips, bus duty, those kinds of things. The scenario is you're in charge of a field trip and somebody rear ends the car. What do you do? Rear ends your bus. What do you do? Because very important that you know the right steps to take. So find out what happens in your district. Talk to your administrators about that. Start dialoguing with them. They have a lot of knowledge, and also it gets you on the radar because we're going to get you a job at the end of this program.
Dr. Lamb, can you just
kind words.
Review very quickly what is due for Sunday?
Just about the bus duty. About the bus accident. Talk to somebody at your school about if what is the policy on field trips in your district, and if talk to somebody, if you were in charge, if you were on that bus and it got rear-ended by a car, what would you do? First thing I'd do is call the law. I'm not a medical doctor. This notion, well, I didn't think anybody was hurt. What's your district policy on dealing with the media? Can you talk to, well, I want anybody, you definitely don't want to tell the News and Record in Greensboro or the Charlotte Observer that nobody was hurt and then somebody does end up being hurt. That wouldn't go well. What do you do? Do you give first aid? Do you call the bus garage first? Do you call the police first? Do you talk to the media? Do you tell parents anything? What do you do when this happens? So that's your assignment for Sunday is find your field trip policy in your district. What is the policy on field trip? But find out if an accident occurred, what would you do? Does your district have a policy on that? Did they tell you right down the line, do A, B, C, D, and E? What does your district say in your field trip policy? And maybe an accident's not addressed in it. And so that's when you would say to your school administrator, what should I do? Kelly, you're a dean at Ardrey Kell. You talk to one of the APs or the principal. You talk to them all day, every day. What would we do if this happened? So that's what we're trying to figure out here is we're trying to work our way through. These are the kinds of things that get you. And these are the things that happen. We're not talking about a 1 in a million here. Buses get rear-ended. Activity buses have wrecks every day. Every day. What are you going to do? These are the kinds of things that early on in your career, you're going to be at the technician level as an AP. You're going to have all the dirty jobs. Going on field trips and supervising, you're going to have all the dirtiest jobs. The trick is to survive them and get to be principal. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to survive those dirty jobs that nobody wants, that are a lot of liability and not much love. That's what we're trying to do. It's good to see you all. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Dr. Lamb, I have one more question.
Yes.
Sorry. So task 1 is due Sunday, Monday, something like that.
Well,
Isn't that it?
Well, I think it, again, I'll give you till the following Sunday if you need it.
So not this Sunday, but the following.
If you can get in this
If you
Sunday,
need
I'd
it.
love to have it. But if you can't, I'm not stressing, because remember, task 2 is copy and paste. It takes
Okay.
5 minutes or less. So,
Okay.
just make sure that by the time the due date for task 2 rolls around, you've got 1 and 2 in. So manage your
Okay.
time, whatever you need. I know, again, those of you who are transitioning, your school is going to second semester. I know this week's busy. So, make sure that you manage your time and do what you need to do at your work site. I don't want to I don't want to throw you under the bus there at work. But if you can get task 1 in this Sunday, I'd love to grade it. If you can't, next Sunday's fine. All right. Anybody else? Dr. Griffin Jordan, thank you for being with us tonight, the voice of reason and expertise. I'll see
Yes,
you
I want
all-
to say thank you to both of you. That was a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully hopefully it will be. Thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for that. Everybody have a good evening. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.